Hi, and welcome back to
Inspired to Game. I'm Sean.
And I'm Lola. If you enjoy what you see here, please support our channel by subscribing down below.
And if you've already subscribed, thank you very much, and life goes on.
And it really does go on and on and on and on. Today we are talking about the pursuit of happiness. This is our Kickstarter big box, which has the original game, base game, as well as all the expansions and modules are pretty much just about every content they have available. Before we get into our review of this game, we're going to do a super quick overview of how to play it. In pursuit of happiness, you will be working to gather the most long-term happiness over the course of a lifetime. At the beginning, everyone will get a couple child traits to choose from, which will give you your own advantage in the game. As well, there will be life goals that everyone gets to work towards. You'll get a certain amount of hourglass workers that you can use throughout your turns. The game is played in a series of rounds, each representing about a decade of life, starting from the teen years up into the old age. During your turn, you can use the amount of hourglasses that you have depending on how stressed you are. Each stressed area has a certain number associated with it that determines how many hourglass workers you get to use. You will use your workers at various locations on the board to either gather resources or do various actions such as taking a project, the blue cards, taking an item or activity, the green cards, taking a job, or finding a partner. Many of these cards will have associated costs that you'll need to be able to pay in resources or even additional hourglass tokens, and some of them will have upkeep costs throughout the game as well. While you're playing, you'll also be getting some short-term happiness or losing some short-term happiness. Whoever is highest on that track will determine who is the first player in the next round of the game. The game is over when everyone has died. This is determined based on how stressed you are. The more stressed you are, the less hourglass workers you have available to you, and once your stress is pushed off over the edge, that indicates your natural passing. Once you enter old age within the game, you will naturally get additional stress. The first area into old age will add 3 additional stress to wherever you currently are on the stress track. As you progress through each areas of the old age will increase that amount, meaning that you are inevitably going to die some point in old age if you didn't stress yourself too much out when you were younger. Once everyone has died, you add up all your long-term happiness points and see who has won the game.
As you can see, Pursuit of Happiness is a worker placement game. It has some open drafting and some resource management elements to it as well.
So we are going to start off by reviewing the base game, and then we'll go into each of the major expansions and talk about our experience with it. So if you don't have the base game, you can get an idea of if this is a game for you, but also if you do and you're wondering about the expansions, you can get an idea of which one you might enjoy the most, if any. So we will break those up and we'll have it down in the chapters below, a list of exactly which one. So if you want to jump to a certain expansion or something like that, it'll be there for you. Okay. So before getting our big box, we had never played this game before, but I gotta tell you, I absolutely love this game. It is so much fun to play. The design of it is so nuanced. It's amazing how every element of it so adequately and effectively represents what life is like and how things play out. And it's crazy fun building your character and watching what crazy things that they do and how their life unfolds. It's very satisfying just watching that happen and seeing who you create.
And you can create it different ways. You can create it simply strategically by this is what's going to give me the most points, or you could land on a theme and just run with it. I think I played a game where everything that had anything to do with writing, that was my guy.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting is you can play it in different ways. You can play it purely for the strategy, going for what's always going to garner you the most points. long-term happiness points, or you can go based on what you want to create, what you want to do, to be creative and intentional with it. I think the fun thing about seeing where the points take you is then you can have a really wild character that comes up. Like maybe your 80-year-old character is picking up snowboarding. There's so many funny things that can happen and so many interesting things.
Yeah. 70-year-old grandpa that got a lip piercing.
And what's interesting about that as well, I noticed you can play this at different levels. So this game can be a lighter or medium weight game, but you can actually, especially when you add in all the expansions, play it at a heavier or crunchy level. So there are so many calculations that can come into it as you're working between getting different resources and paying different resources, and then your upkeep costs and all of it, factoring it in together. If you're playing in a highly strategic way, it can be a really thinky game, rather surprisingly. And you can be playing like that around the table with someone who's playing it more laissez-faire, just lighter, just, oh, well, this looks like fun, I want a marble collection now. And it all works. And it's just kind of neat how you can have different approaches to it, depending on how you want to approach it. And some of the addition packs, like outside of the big expansions that I really enjoy, are pets. I love the Out of the World expansion experience, which can lead you to do things like journey to the center of the earth, or discover a black hole, or even have an alien partner. So there's a lot of fun in the fantasy element that can arise with that. And adding pets in is so fantastic because they kind of progress through life. So each round, their marker will progress as they get older until they die at their natural lifespan time, which makes you sad. You lose short-term happiness, but then you gain long-term happiness because they brought you such joy.
Yeah, and speaking of all the different packs that the different Kickstarter promo packs that we've got with this, and like I said, Out of the World expansion and the Holidays expansion, each of these has the same fantastic artwork, and there's a sense of humor in all of this that is just fantastic. There's some goofy things in there about taxi evasion, just all sorts of twists and puns and just amusement things. Mr. T for relationships is just fantastic. A Mr. T character with a cup of tea. So
there's a lot of fun things going on, and and there's so many cards, huge stacks of cards, and as you go through and discover them, and it's just a riot. It's so much fun, like you choosing your projects, choosing what career you want, choosing your partner. If you want to, you don't have to. And what's nice about that as well, so the partners and the jobs are both double-sided, so you get choices there. So you can choose the male side, the female side. Some of the cards are more non-binary, which is nice as well. So the jobs give you that variability as well, so you can more choose which way you want to go.
The Experiences expansion adds experience cards in the form of trips and happenings, as well as a board to lay them out on. In addition, each player receives a dream board where they can reserve cards to be played later.
My favorite thing about the Experiences expansion is the dream board, because that allows you to reserve up to 3 cards at a time, which can be really great if there's either a project or a job or even an item out there that you know that you want but you can't quite afford, or for some whatever reason can't get in this round. It allows you to hold on to that, and when you reserve it, you also get 1 free token of the type of where you put it down. And between each turn, when you still have one between rounds, you get to add a desire token to it, the little heart. And each one of those translates into 1 long-term happiness for when you use the card, up to a maximum of 3.
Yeah, so those cards you're dreaming, you're reserving of those cards can be played strategically, again, to just gain that 1 more token that you needed, or as Lola said, just be something that I want to get it, I can't pay for it now, but if I dream and put it in my reserve, then it'll be there for a later turn. And the nice thing is that the expansion also comes with a cloud token specifically for you to use with the experience cards. You can still use your hourglass tokens as well, but you're not expected to use all hourglass tokens to do everything now, plus the expansions. There is an additional worker specifically for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes maybe you want to take a card, but you don't have any more of your hourglass workers left, so you use that that cloud one as your option to dream or to use for the experience, which is nice. One thing we didn't mention, in each of the different worker areas that you can use, you can only put one within a round unless you want to stress yourself. So if you say have used the project action this round, you can do it again by putting a second one, but it's going to cause you 1 stress, which means your marker moves down 1 place on that stress marker, which is closer and closer to your inevitable demise. So you want to be careful how much you stress yourself out. The trips are really nice as well. So the experiences offer happenings or trips. It can be like going to a concert, or it can be going to Tibet. So a whole variety of different things. And what's nice too is, so you can start off if you want to by dreaming about it, or you can use your cloud token to plan the experience and take it, paying any required costs and getting any benefits from that. So after you're finished planning, at a later time as a card action, which means you put one of your workers on the card, you can go on the trip and you can extend it as well by paying whatever additional cost it has to be able to get extra benefits from the card too. So it's kind of fun thematically to see what places do you go to, what experiences do you have, and same thing with the dreams. Like I love that thematicness of just being this kid or being a person say, oh, I'm dreaming of this, and then making those dreams happen when they actually happen. I'm thinking about my coffee maker.
That's what I say. Or you could dream of a coffee maker all your life and die unfulfilled.
That happened, and it was the most ridiculous dream, and I didn't dream about it all my life. It was like about the middle of my adulthood when I got it for whatever various reason, and I never actually got to realize my dream of having a coffee maker. So I feel like this adds a lot to the game. So as I mentioned, I really enjoy the base game. I love this game because it's so much fun, and experiences adds a lot to it by just extending what you can do on the board, by being able to dream it, and the trips can be really fun and exciting to add to your story of where you're going. So this is an expansion that I really like.
Yeah, my favorite part is the fact that I can now reserve a card if I happen to be the first player in that round, but I don't have what I need, but I know I want that card. I can grab it and reserve it on my dream board.
Yeah. And that can be particularly helpful with health cards. So health cards are cards that at the end of the card tends to have a little heart, which gives you extra health. So this is the only way that you can advance out of a stress area. So if you notice on the stress board, they are color coded. Usually most of them have 3 spots within each side. So 6 has 3, and then 5, and then 7 each have 3. Now you can rest and have various cards that can relax you, that can decrease your stress, but it can never decrease the stress past the category you're currently in. It can cause you to get more stress out of that category, but you can't decrease it out of that without using a health card. So when you get to that point in a health card where you get to the little red heart, that means you get to progress from your current stress category to the same location in the next lowest spot, as in I guess it's kind of like a higher number but a lower spot.
Lower stress, higher number.
Yeah, so to the next spot of lower stress. And this is important if you want to live longer. If you're not able to do this at least once during the course of the game, you are going to die early in old age, like around in your 70s type of thing. But if you want an extra round and an extra turn, then you've got to try to find one of these health cards to decrease your stress enough that when you get hit by those extra added things, they're not adding to. So it can be really powerful to get an extra entire turn in that maybe your opponents don't have. So whenever those heart cards come up, and they can come in the projects, the blue cards, or sometimes you can get them in the green because there's a health expansion that adds some activities there that give you, but they're usually snapped up right away when they come. We've been playing this a lot to try to get a really good feel of the game for this review. So both the base game and then through all the expansions, and we've had a number of games where we wind up dying in the same round, which works really well, but there's been a couple of games games where, say, I was able to get that extra round and that extra amount of experience from that, and hence points. So yeah, it's really, really beneficial to get that if you can. The community expansion adds another board with a series of community cards that give you events that you're able to interact with. These events can give you additional resources as well as popularity. As you move up on the popularity track, you will be gaining additional long-term happiness benefits as you play the game. So the community expansion, I did not think I would like this at all. I'm not a popular person. I'm not really good with social situations. I'm more of an introverted person. I was never the popular kid. And so I didn't think I'd like this one at all, but I actually really, really love this expansion too. So adding the popularity track, I was meh about that, but it's actually quite useful because essentially translates into more long-term happiness for you. So it gives you a nice little goal for some extra points, because wherever you are in the popularity track, the number that's below each round, you'll gain that amount of long-term happiness. However, your popularity does naturally decay a little bit each round, so you will always go one down each round, but then you can earn more as you do the various events that are in the community. So the community events are a lot of fun. Some of them are negative, like how are you going to deal with this fire, or maybe somebody got hit by a car. I don't know. Is there one like that?
I don't know. Somebody's car broke down for sure.
Yeah, but there's various things like that, as well as great events. Like you might throw a party, celebrate Pi Day. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of very interesting events that happen. And when you choose to use your meeple, so there is a new component for this expansion, which is the meeple, which you can put on one of the cards that you want to interact. It might have a cost. If it has a cost, you must pay it on placing it, and it might have a reward, which you get immediately. Then at the end of the round, you get to choose which outcome you want to choose. So based on the choices that you get, can increase your popularity or potentially decrease it, as well as give you extra resources.
And if you've already used your meeple, but there's still another community card that you want to use, if your popularity is high enough, you can use your hourglass tokens on the community board as well.
Exactly. If you're at 1, then you can use one additional hourglass. 2 if you have more. Yeah. So I really like how this one plays out. It's a lot of really great cards, so I really love this expansion as well.
The Nostalgia expansion gives each player a handful of nostalgia cards at the beginning of the game, representing aspirations and childhood memories. They can choose to work to turn these into something meaningful by realizing them and gaining the reward or ability.
And this one plays a little bit different than the others, where instead of having a board with a new draft of cards, you're just given a set amount of cards to begin with, each of you, that you can work through or not through the game as you choose.
Now within that hand of cards, there are different types of nostalgia cards. There are ones that give you an ability once you finish realizing them. There's life goals, outcomes, and I think there's one that I'm missing, but they all play a little bit differently in how you work through to realize that nostalgia into its final reward. Some even give you rewards that you can continually draw on. So if you became a glassblower, you can accept commissions and work through and kind of use that as a job on the side, or maybe it's your job entirely.
It is really interesting. The reminiscence, it's either like childhood memories or it can be aspirations from your childhood. And it's interesting. So originally, when you place them down on your board, you have the option to trigger them. There's a passive trigger, which is triggered by using some other doing one other step on the board. Then there's an active trigger of doing something, and then if you meet the requirements, then you can realize the dream and you turn it over, which can be a variety of different elements. And it could even be like, finding your true love, reuniting with your old childhood love, or as Sean mentioned, it can be gaining skills like becoming a gardener or a glass blower, which is nice, something like that, because then it offers you this ongoing ability to make money by using some resources. So there's there's a whole variety. Some of the cards will give you some end game long-term happiness based on meeting certain requirements and stuff. So they add a lot of variability to the game that you can customize based on the game that you're playing. So some of it will suit your game depending on what you've been doing with your character and how you've been progressing, whereas other ones you might want to pass on. And I think that's a nice thing about it, is you don't have to do any at all. So these are all just things that are there that you can act on or you cannot. And so you can choose which ones you want, which ones work for you, and just leave the rest, and it's no big deal. It's kind of just like an extra side project you can take on.
What I did like was that what they add to it is now, instead of just the life goals that everybody shares, you can have your own life goal that you want to play in there, or the extra abilities that you might get that your child trait already gives you that kind of ability. Now this is another card that might give you a different kind of ability in addition to the child trait you started with. So I really like that it adds that more powers that you can garner and you can add to your character.
Yeah, and so this one is a good expansion. I do like it as well. To me, I like this one the least of the lot of them. I just do. Like, it's still a good one, and I'm grateful that we have it. But when it comes down to it, like, if I was to buy them, okay, if I had the base game and I was to see which ones I think would be worth buying, I think for myself, I would choose experiences first, because the experiences are fun and it's really nice to be able to reserve a few cards. Then community, because I think that works really well within it and really augments your experience. And then my third would be nostalgia.
See, I think my order would be experiences, because I like the reserving, and then nostalgia because of the extra powers, and then community.
He tends to be less popular than I am. Yeah, so it's very individual. I do think no matter what, the expansions add to the base game. I would not play the base game without an expansion at all, just because it had so much variety. It adds so much more to it. So you play the base game, so much of it's about, oh, what projects are you going to get, what items are you going to buy, and that's nice. And of course, maybe you want to get a job, maybe you want to get a partner, and those partners, maybe you just date. You can take them into a serious relationship, you can take them into a long-term relationship, and even have kids with the expansion, and that's kind of fun too. But yeah, I think that the expansions add enough to make it so much more realistic and so much more interesting to play. So I would highly recommend, if you got the base game, to pick up which expansion sounds best to you. We also tried playing it all together, because that's what we were curious about too. How does this play by putting everything together? And oh my gosh, that is insane. Now, we just played one game putting everything together, and I did feel from that one experience of it all that it was a little much. There is so much that you can do, but the thing is, you're still gaining the same amount of resources. There's only so many resources you can get. There's only so many hourglass worker tokens you have, workers that you have, that I found I felt a little spread too thin. Now, granted, you don't have to do everything. You don't have to worry about community or experiences. You don't have to go on a trip, or you don't have to do these things. And it is nice to have the option for all of these things, but I still felt that I was constantly in this situation where I wasn't getting as many resources as I wanted to accomplish what I wanted to do. It was definitely fun to try putting it all together, and maybe because we probably got about 15 games of this under our belt. Maybe after playing with it for a year or two, we would be a little bit more adept at putting them all together. But right now, I think my preference is to play with just one or two expansions at a time, and we've done that as well. So we played with them each individually as expansions as well. We've combined them in different ways, as well as doing it all together. But it's just nice to not have too much to worry about.
So the good thing is that there's a lot of cards out there, and you can maybe find something that is going to give you the reward that you want. But at the same time, there are so many cards out there to look at that you it kind of adds to analysis paralysis, where you end up going, oh, well, I didn't see that, but if I did that first, and then if I did this, and then I did this, and then suddenly you're just in this thought loop, and 5 minutes have gone by and you haven't taken your turn. So
I found it physically stressful playing with all of it, like at least mid-game, and it certainly added to the length of the game, but it was just like, it was stressful figuring out. And I really love to think of this game on a deeper level. I love to work with really managing all my resources. So I want to do that, but I need this, but I need that for that, and I need this for that. And it's like, okay, so I need that, so I'll need, if I do this, then I could get that, but if you get, and so on and so forth. So it can lead to a bit of stress.
And I found that I did actually lose sight of some things, like I wasn't playing my community meeple as well as I could, or maybe I was missing opportunities to dream when I could have, to get that little bit extra. So yeah, it's a lot to keep track of, and odds are you're gonna miss something, but
yeah, but that's the interesting thing though, like, because only doing that all experience as one is, I can see that it can actually be a totally different experience, because you don't have to do it all. And it's hard because you kind of want to do a little bit of everything and dabble. But like for instance, when we played everything all together, the friends board that's there, I never got a friend. I never even bothered looking at the friends. And we were so busy with other things that I didn't even get a relationship that game either, because there's just so much to going on. But it means that you can pick and choose where you want to focus. It doesn't have to be on everything. You don't need to touch everything. So with keeping that in mind, it probably would be less stressful, and it still could be a really good experience. I think you just have to really be very, very experienced at the game to probably pull off a less stressful experience of it all. Yeah, so there you have it. That is our review of Pursuit of Happiness, each of their expansions, which ones we personally recommend, and how we recommend playing it. It continues to be a wonderful experience for us. We do have a couple of things that we would love to see different. One of the first things I want to mention is I don't care for the relationship cards, how they are pink for the women and blue for the men. And there are a couple of cards within it that are like purple, that could be more non-binary. I don't like that that dichotomy of those colors, the pink washing, the blue washing, and I don't think that was necessary at all for it. So if there was one thing I could change, I probably would change that myself. It is a nitpicky minor thing that doesn't affect gameplay at all, but it is something of note to mention. And the playmat. So if you're wondering about the playmat is huge, and it's a little bit bigger than it needs to be, especially the outside track, and it's quite the table hog. So generally when we play, we don't play with a playmat, we just play with the board that came with it. However, we only played with the playmat when we brought out everything, because the thing is too, if you're not playing with everything, now you've got a whole bunch of empty tracks that are just kind of taking up space on your board. So I think it's really just beneficial to bring out when you're playing with everything. But each of the individual boards you can just add on where you want separately, so it's a little superfluous. So if you're wondering about getting the mat or not, it just depends on what your preference is, but most of the time we don't use it at all. We just use the regular board. Yeah,
remember then the extra boards are only for experiences, community, and friends, the friends module. So odds are you might not be playing with all three of those anyway, so you don't really need the whole mat for that.
Yeah. So if this is a game that looks interesting to you, the base game has been out for many years, and the Nostalgia expansion should be coming soon out to retail. I think the other ones are all already existing. Go and check them out if it sounds like fun. Thank you so much for watching with us today.
Check out some of our other videos.
And in the meantime, happy gaming, folks. Outside of the big expansions, there are mini expansions.
Okay, Pursuit of Happiness is a worker placement. Oh man.
Your 80-year-old granny is picking up snowboarding at the age of 80. Oh, I said 80. I'll be there for.
There you go.